Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Today's topic is bullying, defined as a pattern of harming and humiliating others who are weaker or more vulnerable. When I was growing up, a bully was a schoolyard thug who was bigger and meaner than most of the other kids, someone to be avoided. Sooner or later, another meaner and bigger kid came along and took the crown. There was always a bully, a stereotypical damaged boy or girl who was portrayed in movies and comic strips, exemplifying the struggle between good and evil. That was nothing compared to the type of bullying that's been going on since the advent of electronic communication devices and social media. My recollection of a schoolyard bully is child's play compared to today's cyberbullying. Size and strength are no longer required. A cell phone is all that's needed to harm and humiliate others with anonymity and impunity. In a fully digitized world where the internet never sleeps, cyberbullying is becoming a new pandemic that causes mental, emotional, and physical distress to its victims 24/7. Despite constant efforts to diminish its scope and destructive consequences, harassment online across emails, social media forums, and messaging apps has no foreseeable ending. According to one study, more than half of today's teenagers have had some form of harassment. Who hasn't cringed at tragic reports of teenagers and young and old adults who have been driven to suicide by a relentless onslaught of cyberbullying? My guest today on 30 Minutes at MLTV 21 is Dr. Claudio Cerullo, who's an author of a best-selling book, Inside the Mind of a Bully, From a Victim to Advocate. Claudio is a renowned expert in anti-bullying and school violence prevention. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I couldn't remember. I mean, I've been doing this for several years, but I could not remember when. I was sure, but when you and I last met. And we have just found out it was back in 2012?
2012.
My God.
And a lot has happened in the last...
You've been very busy.
Yes, 16 years.
Yeah, you've been very, very busy. Tell me, I know you're a teacher and you've been a teacher, but what was the impetus for this? What caused you to devote your personal and professional life to doing what you can to, one, bring awareness, put the spotlight on bullying, and then put programs in place to deal with it and prevent it where if possible?
Well, look, the impetus was I was a victim myself. Thus the title of my book, From Victim to Advocate. I was an immigrant, young person. We came to the United States in 1976 from Italy. I have an elderly brother and two elderly sisters, and growing up in an area that really was against immigrants, especially Italian, in my hometown, was very difficult. The other piece of that was growing up impoverished. I had two very strict Italian parents who basically stated, I'm going to give you everything you need to go to school. You simply be respectful and do what the teachers tell you to do. The problem, in that era, growing up in the 70s, 80s, was there was no real technology. So everything was physical. And then physical, and growing up impoverished, I didn't have anything cool, right? So if you remember the old adage, Bobos, they cost $1.95, they make your feet smell fine. I didn't have cool sneakers, I didn't have a members only jacket, I didn't have a cool backpack. So unfortunately, after the transition from 5th grade into middle school, which is really nothing there has much changed other than the technological advances in cyber harassment, I get bullied simply because I'm a poor immigrant Italian kid. And one day, as I share this story to kids all over the world, I was walking home from a 6-block middle school. Kids decided to throw rocks at my face and at me. They shattered my nose several times, cracked my front teeth, and I went home, threw my bloody clothes away, and never told my parents, which is really part of why a lot of kids today and even adults hide and shelter because of fear of retribution. I knew that if I said something to my father or I didn't fight back, it would be worse for me, and I said nothing. I didn't apply ice to my face, and my nose kind of grew like a ski slope. Although my father basically thought it was my, Roman nose. The nose is whatever. It caused me a lot of problems, from sleeping issues to breathing issues to personal self-esteem issues. I finally, in my senior year of high school, convinced my father that the insurance company would pay for rhinoplasty surgery and it wouldn't cost him anything, and my nose was fixed. And then from there, I decided to devote my life studying education and psychology, and hopefully bring in a sense of awareness to, at the time, just school violence-based issues. Really, bullying did not really become a tagline until 2006, when CNN first coined it with the death of Phoebe Prince, which was a young lady from Massachusetts who was bullied and took her life to cyber harassment. So since then, now teachanti-bullying.org, and has been since inception in 2011, we've been doing wonderful things across 33 states in this country, addressing hundreds of thousands of kids, families, and educators on this awareness. And really, Rick, and I appreciate you saying the awareness, because that's the operative piece. It's really not. We're never going to eradicate someone not being kind to you. But I think what we can do is build upon the foundation of supporting my simple adage, and that is kindness. It's not that hard.
You just brought back a memory. When my two brothers and I were growing up in West Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Way back when, many years before you. But because we were from the Middle East,
right,
we were bullied. And I remember you mentioned the nose.
Yeah.
My brother, one of my brothers, really had a hook nose.
Right.
And he was attacked. They broke his nose. And he came out of it okay, but he came out with a much better looking nose than he had before.
So he had plastic surgery in another manner.
He did.
I see.
He did. But back then, and even today certainly, but back then, it was hurtful, it was
Very
harmful.
much.
Some of my kids went through it as well. But it happened to so many people.
Correct.
Particular ethnic group,
right,
race, or whatever. When I went to high school, we had very few minorities in our high school,
right,
in West Philadelphia. And it was relatively small. But there was still some bullying and harassment, but
sure,
not a heck of a lot of it. I'm going to get to the question later in our visit, but what did it take for you to pull yourself up and say, I'm not going to let this happen to me psychologically. I won't let them beat me down psychologically. Because it's all up here.
It is absolutely all psychologically. Yeah. I don't think many recover from being a victim. And I would say that, myself included, it's interesting and probably somewhat ironic that many of the young people going back to 1985 that are now adults in my age bracket, from 50 to 56, who have children of their own, if not grandchildren, have reached out and apologized to me, knowing the work that I do. And while I've, finally accepted an apology, the trauma still is there in part. And I think that the message has to be delivered that we can repair ourselves. From a plastic surgeon standpoint, we put a car back together. We try to put a human body back together. My nose has been fixed. My teeth have been fixed. I still have many, many sleeping issues because as a result, I have had multiple surgeries, all dating back to my nose being shattered. The problem that I think is the major impetus for change and policy making in our country is the intrinsic trauma that, without good therapy and without good programming, those research-based programming and wraparounds within our schools and communities, it's very challenging to say, I feel better about myself.
Yeah.
I took my aggression out on sports, on weightlifting. I then, in progressing to where we are today, had it not been for my wife, who has a child on the autism spectrum who was badly bullied, in a local community, it may have never gotten under wraps and started the way it, because she said to me, there are no resources, no one supports us, I don't know what to do. And that's not uncommon, because in many communities, especially marginalized communities, parents don't know what to do. They don't have an outlet, they don't have the financial means. We place a lot of emphasis on standardized testing, but not enough on safety and security, especially when it comes to victimization. And unfortunately, and we can get to this later in the show, what we were able to do in one of the most violent cities in America, in Camden, New Jersey, by utilizing our kids and empowering our kids to establish a new municipal ordinance, has now transcended to a bill that's on its way to Governor Murphy in New Jersey. And it could be the first of its kind statewide. But we need legislation. I have also, and I'm sure you'll ask me, but I've pressed the last 3 presidents on an executive order raising the level of awareness, not just October for National Anti-Bullying Month, and most recently drafted a letter to President Donald Trump for an executive order raising the level of awareness in this country, really focusing on LGBTQ youth, those who are marginalized, and those who are potential victims of bullying.
But bullying, as you know better than I, bullying has been around since Cain and Abel.
Correct.
In the Old Testament. That kind of animosity.
Right.
Is it part of our DNA to hate, to take advantage of people who are smaller, younger, lesser than we are in some way?
It's interesting you said genetics and you utilize genetics, because when we talk about, when I teach psychology, I'm a psychology professor, and I talk within this chapter of abnormal psychology, there is what's called a warrior gene. So when you look at people like Jeffrey Dahmer and some serial killers, and not that bullying rises up to that, but there are what we call a warrior gene, and some men have this warrior gene. And you say to yourself, how can somebody be so retaliatory or blatantly just shoot you in a parking lot, or take a bat and hit you over the head, or insult you because of your race or ethnicity? That is genetic in part, and it's also you're a product of your extrinsic environment and also how you were raised in terms of the family unit and structure. So that is absolutely imperative to understand, and so we have to focus on that type of byproduct, and we look at in our school and our communities today, trauma-informed care, and dealing with restorative practices. I mean, a lot of young people, as you know, it's not new information, but they go through their own hardship, punitive punishment, being suspended, being expelled, drugs, alcohol. Right now, the disparity between mental health and funding in this country. Bullying is a subset of many other variables: domestic violence, elderly victimization, child abuse. So the underlining, thematic question for me clinically is, how do we reduce the level of violence from bringing a weapon to school and shooting 20 innocent children and 6 professionals at Sandy Hook, to basically not pushing someone down the stairs over the fact that he or she would not give up their lunch money, is the underlining question. And it is a trying one. And schools and administrators, nationally are trying to deal with keeping an entity that's supposed to be geared towards learning to promote safety as you enter the threshold.
I have taught in a prison in my career after graduate. I've taught as an adjunct.
Sure.
I've taught college level. I've taught high school level. But I just finished a elementary school as a volunteer, and that was the toughest of all. These kids, by and large, they have no respect, no consideration for others. It's just it's an entirely different generation. I worry, I'm concerned that this is the future. To what extent, therefore, and you mentioned it, the environmental.
Sure.
But culturally, we've changed so much, and technology hasn't helped because we've become terribly impersonal, inconsiderate of one another. But culturally, how do we turn that around? We can have all the legislation in the world, but people will behave the way they behave.
That's right. Well, here's my thing today, and it's interesting. You mentioned the operative word of there's no respect. So obviously, you know, growing up in your heritage, my Italian heritage, there is nothing beyond. If you're not respectful, you're not respectful.
Right.
It's very challenging to teach those 3 R's, and respect being one of them. And we've lost that, certainly. And the internet, the World Wide Web, and so forth has really watered down that ability to just simply give someone a handshake.
Empathy.
Well, that's the other piece of the character program that we see, that no one seems to understand how you made me feel and be in my shoes. And unless you walk in someone's shoes, you just don't understand what it's like to wear a hoodie and be profiled because of the color of your skin, or the fact that you're transgender, or the fact that you're homosexual. I mean, whatever the case may be, personally, it does not give somebody the right to retaliate. So, you know, looking at it from a theory standpoint, where does that come from? Genetics, external environmental factors, and your upbringing, and how you are taught, and the values and character of your family. And maybe it's not a nuclear family, mom and dad, but it could be an uncle, an aunt, a grandparent. It is that returning to the old school values of respect and responsibility and accountability. And it's about the role models that you know,
Yes.
the whole adage is, tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. There's a lot to say about that. But we need to restore that and teach empathy along with mathematics, science, social studies, and English.
But in the scheme of things.
In the scheme, yeah.
In the scheme of things, to what extent does religion,
Sure.
any religion, or some level of spirituality, act as guardrails on their behavior?
Well, I mean, look, I'm a Catholic boy, right? So, I mean, that to me, having that sense of faith and spirituality is important. And I also think that in today's society, many have lost that sense.
Exactly.
That unless they're in dire needs or dire strait, they don't reach out and they don't say, hey, God, give me help. And obviously the schools, and especially in the public, they cannot, you know, and I think that's when really we've had that implosion, when they took religion out of schools. And you see some states like Florida and Texas going back to some of these issues because they know that respect factor is a critical one. And you see in New Jersey, in Delaware, and Pennsylvania, the shortage of teachers, the shortage of nurses right now, because they don't feel that I work very hard for my education and I'm not respected by my patients, by my students. And that's heartbreaking to hear from you. You went into an elementary school. I mean, imagine middle and high school dealing with respect of kids today is very challenging, and no one should be disrespected simply for wanting to educate you.
Tell me from your book, what is the mind of a bully? How do you profile that?
Well, you know, like, look, so, and without profiling who a bully is, but, you know, the mind of a bully is someone who has purpose. Who has purpose to hurt you in 2 domains. The physical, so either hurting you fist to cuff, taking your personal possessions. Usually in today's day and age, it's your cell phone, your Jordan sneakers, and your backpack. There are 3 commodities that I need to have because I can do a lot with that from a wholesale value. And then the more serious one, which is right now, the second leading cause of death, 13 and 19-year-olds, this is a fact through the CDC, is the psychological variables that affecting our children through cyber harassment, that simple cell phone you said, through form of technology, and even more so moving into now AI technology and what's called deep fakes. So I can take a video of you, alter it for my own gain. It's happened to Tom Cruise. It's happened to Senator Ted Cruz. It's happened to many, even Al Roker, who just won an Emmy. So they all take your image and your voice and do whatever they want for their gain and purpose. And, you know, just happened to a Bucks County young lady who was a cheerleader, and she was, they made her look that she was vaping and it violated the standards, and she was removed until an investigation, and the mother was behind that in Bucks County. You know, but my concern, the bigger concern, are the psychological issues of hurting someone to the point where he or she wants to take their life because they've been victimized, or ultimately hurt someone in a school community. And that community could be at the drugstore, it could be at a movie theater, it could be anywhere because of the underlying trauma and harassment that they have gone through. Something will have to break there. And I think that's the challenge for schools today across the United States is how do we look at that if a child, one, is not reporting it or hasn't been reported, which is why our laws in New Jersey are very tough on bullying. And I say legislation because unless you have some type of sanction, it's very hard to police it. What are you going to have, a detention? That's not going to deter anything. No. So we try to look at a restorative level where there's community service. There is civic responsibility. There's workshops that the parent and child have to attend. And then there's a sanction of $50 all the way up to $500 where you hit the parent in the pocketbook. That's what we have been able to do in Camden.
Do you really think that's going to work?
What's working in Camden? We've seen a decrease. We've seen a decrease. NBC 10 did a really great story on it. It's working. And now we've developed the legislation to move on to the state level. And many communities, such as Elizabeth Patterson, Newark, are wanting to adopt this.
So legislation in that case is acting as a deterrent?
Correct, because no one wants to be hit with a fine and they don't want to do community service.
Okay, that doesn't fix the problem, though.
No.
The bully is still inclined to be a bully.
That's right. But at least there's a bridge between the school, which has HIB, harassment, intimidation, bullying laws in the school, and then during the summer and also during this, the vacation times, you at least are addressing it. If it happens, a parent can file a complaint with the Camden County Police Department.
Do you have enough data, evidence to be confident that the program that is apparently working in Camden, an impoverished area, would be as effective in a more affluent area where bullying is probably even worse?
The key, yes, and I know why you're going to say that it's worse, because the difference is the financial means of a parent saying, I am going to hire an attorney and my child is not wrong. You need the support of the families. If the families don't buy into it, and even if, let's just say, the township commissioners here in Wayne or Radnor say, we want to adopt the ordinance, and it's not difficult to do.
But enforcing it
is, and you need the buy-in of the parents. And the parents on both sides have to say, I agree, and I'm going to hold my child accountable.
But as you know, again, better than I, it's even more complicated than that, because the victim has to step up and say, I need help.
And that's correct.
And the stigma attached to that is, well,
And no one wants that stigma.
No.
I know.
No. Why? I did some research in preparation for our visit, because it's a subject of interest to me as well. Why is it that the U.S. is ranked among the top 4 of all countries around the world for the incidence of bullying, more than South America and more than Europe? In fact, most European countries comparatively low.
Right.
Why are we up there? Is it because we are, by nature and our society, more aggressive?
It's interesting. I go back to what you said earlier about character and respect and parental enforcement. If you look at a country, again, I even traveled the globe. I have not traveled the globe, but I can tell you that if you look at countries in the Middle East, you look at countries in Europe, you look at countries in Asia, there is no negotiating or debate or argumentative behavior with parents. The parent, and in most cases the mother, says this is the way it is, and your punishment is going to be worse. If the school calls a parent in Italy or Spain or Germany, you're going to face retribution at home, despite the sanctions in the school. And even in an Asian American community, they're very strict about respect. I mean, here it's like, unfortunately, many children are raised by a single parent. It's 62%. You look at divorce, now nearly at 70%. You look at the recidivism of lacking employment in the United States, and many states can't find work. So, and again, not that theft is the issue of bullying, but aggressive behavior, violence, the accessibility of a weapon. So we still go back to, is it the gun that's killing the person, or is it the person killing the person?
It's the latter, obviously.
Correct. So everybody says, let's blame the gun. And we know that it's not the gun. And then you have the lack of mental health and health care in this country is another problem because kids can't get good therapy. And in schools, usually there's like maybe in a let's just take a large Philadelphia school. They may have 500 kids on their caseload to one counselor.
Yeah.
So they're not getting the therapy. Parents are not looking at mental health. And even if they were, they don't have the information and resources. So kids are looking for that affiliation of a gang or some supportive cultural system.
Are the Scandinavian countries, which are
They're the best.
with a model for just
They
about
are a model.
everything? They are?
They're a model for behavior, character.
Because of their healthcare programs?
School, education is
yeah.
paramount.
Yeah.
Family, home, and structure. Divorce is very, very low if you look at the Scandinavian nations. I mean, they may even have a 12% divorce rate, so low. And they also have a very good policing department, you know, in terms of working with the law enforcement community. They don't have violence. I mean, they only had, in the last 5 years, if you combine the Scandinavian nation, maybe 7 shootings in a school. And most recently, we had one in Europe and Spain, and that they've never had any school shootings. You know, so again, you got to look at the whole idea of the community coming together.
But as you've just demonstrated, it's a multifaceted
Very
problem.
much so.
And there's not enough, money is not the answer.
No.
That's which is certainly needed, but that's not the solution.
Money is an issue here in the States. We don't have funding.
Yeah.
And right now, unfortunately, we're losing a lot of funding, as you know, to DEI-based programs, DEIE-based programs, to LGBTQ-based programs. So, and you know, and even if, for example, like we're looking at anti-bullying-based programs, it's very difficult for an organization like ours to find funding.
I have a bias.
Okay.
No, I believe many of those programs simply enrich the people who create them and
That's
run
fair.
them, and very little benefit to the people for whom they're intended.
Well, here's the only problem with that. Then how does somebody who comes from
Nonprofits proliferate, and most of them don't deserve to exist.
I see. Oh, okay, that's a fair statement.
Generally.
That's a fair statement.
Oh, okay. No. Again, going back to your book, you profile, you describe the mind of a bully, but you also focus on the victims.
Correct.
What is the profile, if that's the appropriate word, of a victim?
So
a very vulnerable person.
I don't want to negate that when you look at the perpetrator, we tend to forget the perpetrator. And he or she who, again, will say, you know, is the, for terms of this interview, a bully, male or female, they often don't get the help and support they need. They're simply punished. There's no restorative or, you know, trauma-based program to help that person. We don't ask the questions oftentimes enough, those hard questions like why? Why did you just simply go up to someone because maybe they were a transgender or they were whatever, and you punch them in the face and you broke their nose or you potentially could hurt somebody till you take their life? We focus on the punitive, and we want to hold them accountable to the point where they're charged with a crime, but we need to have the safeguards in place for the perpetrator to get the support that he or she needs. I want to make that clear that while there's a victim, I also believe from a restorative practice standpoint, you have to make both parties whole to understand what you did to me, Rick. What you did affected my life. You sent an email, a text, you posted this about me, which is false and untrue, and this is what you did to me. And I want you to understand how you affected my life. As for the victim, that victim without support ends up in life like me after 38 years of trying to figure out what did I do to someone or people.
And the answer is nothing.
And I did nothing. I was just a person that wanted to go to school. I could not help my parents' financial background and wanted to be successful and make my family proud and play sports. And I couldn't do that in peace. And I had to leave one high school to go to another high school, a Catholic high school, to find that peace.
And you did find
And I did
safety?
find that peace. I found safety in a Catholic and a parochial setting.
Let's turn to school violence in the moment we have left. School shootings.
Sure.
That's another area in which you have expertise.
Very much so.
And you consult with schools.
Yeah, I'm an active shooter trainer.
Yeah. Do you find that school administrators, for the most part, are receptive and eager to have your help?
Yes.
Or do they resist? Because if they engage in a program, they are therefore committed to report,
Correct.
to monitor, and so on.
when it comes to active shooter preparation, they're very much committed, because the number one goal of any school-based community or organization is safety.
Of their children.
Safety, and first from the bus stop to the bus to the threshold of a classroom.
Claudio, we're winding down now. For those who would like to know more about your program, how can they get information?
Very simply, you can reach out to teachantibullying.org, all one word, or 484-431-9711. Ask for our executive director, Daniela Cerullo, who happens to be my lovely wife. And we have done programs from soup to nuts within the classroom, in the community, and working with our law enforcement and mental health community.
I have one more question. You have to give me a 1 minute answer. What's your goal? What's your ultimate goal? You're not going to eradicate bullying.
I have no expectation to eradicate it, but my expectation is to help bring smiles to those who have been victimized and ultimately try to spread a little kindness. And my mission is simply, it's not that hard for us to just be friends. We can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, I need to respect you for who you are and where you've come from.
Bravo.
Thank you very much for your time, Rick. I appreciate it.
My guest today has been Claudio Cerullo, who is an extraordinary man who's taken on a very big job. Until next time, I'm Rick Anthony. This is 30 Minutes. Take very good care of yourselves